Conscious collaboration brings together entrepreneurs, changemakers, and thought leaders. We aim to highlight the people that embody the idea of aligned mind, body, and business. Each week, we share, discuss, and learn from the various experiences and ideas of our guest experts. Through our discovery, we find a path to an aligned mind, body, and business.
Hey guys, it's me, Lisa.
And this is Emily. And together we are the Conscious Collaboration Podcast. What up, Lisa? What up, people of the Conscious Collaboration?
Humans, also bots, perhaps.
The Collaboration Nation.
Right. Yes. I like that.
Yeah.
We'll have to add that to our swag when we create it.
The Collaboration Nation. All right. Therapy DJs. Yeah. So I'm going to go into coach mode a little bit today, coach/nurse mode. And we're going to chat about something that's been on my mind perpetually for some time now. And that is this. So if you're a person and you're outside of, say, like the health and fitness wellness space, and if you've ever tried to go online and try to get health information or fitness information, you can probably relate to this idea of just being bombarded with information, misinformation, disinformation. Some of it's probably good. And, it can get really overwhelming. Even I'll say as a practitioner who knows a few things with the amount of information that's out there. And so I wanted to touch upon, I'm going to call it like the one thing. So, because one of the big problems, it's a good thing on one hand to have so much information at our fingertips and so much free information at our fingertips, so easily accessible. It can be a really great thing if at least you're armed with the tools to be able to discern and sort through the nonsense. And to some of the stuff is pretty clearly BS, right? But it can get a little tricky when you get in the weeds. So, and one of the biggest problems with that is that people can get overwhelmed and just say, like, forget the whole thing and just kind of go back to, whatever it is they were doing rather than continue on the journey to improve their health and fitness. So I wanted to come in from at least from the dietary perspective, and making the point that there are a handful of what I'll call pillars, right, that ultimately you will need to address to really have a well-rounded health, fitness, and wellness sort of regimen. But to focus on the food one, which is definitely one of the bigger and more important ones. And that's the category where it can get even the most confusing, right? What's best? Paleo, vegan, carnivore. You've got people, they'll literally be almost religious about their tribes and their sort of ways of eating, and everybody should eat this way and nobody should eat XYZ, and really it's just so much more nuanced than that. And that can get really, really frustrating. So I wanted to talk about, if you're going to just make one change, right, or at least one to start, which I believe is kind of how people should operate anyway, more of a habit stacking type of way, because, if you try to change everything about your lifestyle overnight, you might be successful for a period of time, but that's just not really a sustainable way to operate. So if we're going to focus on one thing that will have the biggest impact across, not only if you're trying to, lose body fat or maybe build some muscle or whatever it is kind of aesthetically and fitness oriented that you're trying to do, this one focus would also have some of the biggest impact on your overall health, longevity, quality of life. Okay, because on the other hand, we're seeing more and more clearly how not doing this one thing is having detrimental effects on our overall health. Uh, and we'll get more into that. So basically, if you're sitting there in suspense, you know, like what is the one
I
thing?
am.
But the one thing, and it's really, I mean, it's simple, guys. The one thing that you can do to your diet today to make the biggest impact on your fitness and your overall health is to really focus on eating the vast majority of whole natural foods. Okay. And I put that natural word in there not to be confused with store brand Whole Foods, which is fine if you want to shop there, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about making the vast majority of your diet come from nature. So the closer to the animal or the earth, right, the better. Um, and you can fit this concept into any dietary paradigm, whether you choose to, you know, be vegan or paleo or carnivore or whatever it is. And often you'll find if you kind of get into the weeds of these different diet tribes, that really a lot of the main things that they're saying are the same. The difference is just where you're getting your proteins from. But you know, really, if you're doing vegan right, or if you're doing keto right, or paleo, or whatever the case may be, you're getting your nutrition from whole natural foods, and and so this does a lot of things for us, and we can kind of start to break that down a little bit. Uh, and kind of the main factor of it being that you're actually getting the nutrient value from from the foods that you're eating, rather than say going to a more refined or ultra processed version of something where they've removed the water, they removed the fiber, and they've largely just, you know, maybe they've fortified it with you know, vitamins or what have you, but by removing the food from its original, what you would refer to as food matrix, you've really then made it devoid of the actual nutrition that is going to then set off a cascade of events in your body that affects your hunger and satiety signals, and your blood sugar response, and you know, in so doing, your behaviors for the rest of the day and the rest of your life, really. um, and because we can see, you know, when you eat whole natural foods, um, how good of a response you can get. You can look at what happens as we start to make up more and more of our diet of these more ultra processed and refined foods, how much those natural metabolic processes are disturbed. And that just has a trickle down effect on every aspect of your life and your behavior and the way you feel, and how difficult or easy it is to do other behavior changes that you may be trying to do to you know, boost your health. So you know, and let me just say this statistic really quick. I'm not a person. I'm a person who can see and hear statistics, and you know, I'm not the human computer that's going to you know, recall every single thing. But two that always stick out in my mind are this, and just to kind of uh, underscore the problem that we're facing as Americans in particular here, 60% of our diet, American adults, currently is made up of ultra processed foods. 60%.
Mhm.
When you look at children, it's more. It's 70%. And even if we don't have much of a background in food and nutrition, I think with the information that has been coming out lately, we can all kind of hear those numbers and go, oh, that's probably not good. you know and it, there's a lot of forces against what we're talking about here. There's a lot of money and a lot of entities who make money, based off of these things. And so there's a lot, and I mean a lot, like tons of money put into the marketing and the psychology, and even the food psychology of these things. What makes a person essentially addicted to these foods, or the mouthfeel and the texture and the different factors that you know give us those dopamine hits. And I mean, there are scientists whose only job is to kind of figure out how to make these foods as palatable or as tasty as possible, so that we keep on coming back and coming back to these foods. um, so it's a really hard, and it gets even more insidious because now we have this term of greenwashing, right? Where there's a ton of food out there on the market now, uh, that has healthy or different variations of that, all over the cover of it. But when you really get into the weeds of it, you can find that is indeed not the case. Maybe it's just a an ultra processed version of a plant-based food. That's just one example of terminology that marketers can use to make somebody think that something
Yeah, I mean, it's
is
like
healthy.
going grocery shopping and seeing like the special vegan section where you're buying the vegan cheese singles and the sausages and the meat products that are vegan, but they're like ultra processed and flavored to taste like as close as it can to some sort of meat, which is weird. But
Exactly. Or just throwing around the term natural, or there's lots of sort of unregulated language and terminology around it. And it is frustrating, even as a person who really understands a lot about this stuff. I can get stumped in looking at labels, and I can get bamboozled. So I mean, really, the biggest solution to that is to minimize, right? And nobody's asking anyone to be perfect. Perfection is not the goal here, but to shift to a vast majority whole natural foods diet where you're not looking at an ingredients list. Maybe something's in a package for safety purposes, right? Raw meat or whatever. But something where you look at the ingredients label and it's one thing.
right. Yeah.
Maybe two, right? If they add
Mhm.
some salt or something like that. So that's really what I want to emphasize to people, is that if we just shift to a diet that is comprised of vast majority whole natural single ingredient, close to the earth and animal foods as possible, then we don't have to worry about getting a PhD in reading ingredients labels.
Mhm.
And then when we do, it's going to be okay to include some things in packages here and there, but maybe instead of surrounding our meal, making it the star of the meal, maybe we just have a few items that we like to use as, think of it as like a condiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I think it's still prudent to look at your ingredients labels and make sure you're not getting anything crazy. And you can still then make some better choices based upon how simple the ingredients list is, right? For these things that we're using more like condiments or side items or just for flavor kind of thing. So and I don't know, I know you've been a pretty health conscious person for quite some time. Even if you maybe have meandered from one philosophy to another and maybe found some stuff that works better. I know me, I'm really passionate about this stuff, and it's not because of a place of judgment that I'm coming from whatsoever. It's because I've been there in a place where, um, I was not treating my body well at all. Um, I wasn't. I, I wasn't concerning myself until yeah, and I've been through the whole gamut of different kind of diet paradigms, and until I learned about the paleo framework, I was not concerning myself with whole natural foods whatsoever. That doesn't mean I wasn't eating any. Thankfully I was, and thankfully my mom growing up at least had the wherewithal to understand that stuff that was super brightly colored or what have you was junk food. And so we still had some problematic stuff growing up, uh but let's say it was, I don't know, golden grams instead of
Right.
Fruity Pebbles or whatever. So maybe a little better on the hierarchy of crap versus not crap. But the point is that I'm not coming from a place of perfection whatsoever. I'm coming from a place of I was on the train to chronic disease, and even had some definite indicators of insulin resistance, especially once I got pregnant, and then in the time period right after that, when I was just kind of trying to get it together. So yeah, what do you think
Do
so
you
far?
still see, yeah, do you still see a lot of instances where people are resistant to whole food concepts? Are you experiencing that in your communities or clientele where they're just like, well,
Yeah, and I don't know that it's resistant so much as if they're not consuming the content that I'm consuming all day long, which most people aren't. It's just they're just not aware, especially I'll say in older populations, or not even just older like seniors, but us, like people who came up in the 80s and 90s, when, for example, low fat was the
that's
was
still
the
like a
deal.
mindset that you're seeing? Like, are people
Oh yeah, because it was coming from everywhere, and it was so programmed,
like
into it. And eggs are bad, and red meat is bad, and eggs
yeah,
raise your cholesterol, and all fat is bad, and move more, eat less, and that whole paradigm was so programmed into us by and by entities who people trust, or trusted at least.
yeah.
And that's not to say that especially at an individual level with doctors and everything, that there was malicious intent. I think you can look at some things now and find some malicious intent, but people were teaching this because this is what they thought was Correct. And, if you kind of look at the whole trajectory of what that did, the low fat movement, for example. Okay, well, so now you're getting all these, like, remember Snackwell's cookies, right? And
what were all these chips that you could eat that gave everybody like,
oh, the Olestra, yeah, the fake fat chips and all these sorts of things that came of that really, I think, put like a rocket pack on the ultra processed food industry, because then you could start marketing everything as low fat, and this was even before people started talking about sugar and added sugars. And so in consideration of making something tasty, you got sugar, salt, and fat. So if we're taking out the fat, then up goes the sugar content, right?
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, and that was certainly the case with things like Snackwells and that, and so you just created this whole. And then I don't know if you remember this, but there was a time period where, and it was kind of around the same time, where they said, oh, you got to eat like every 2 hours or less. You got to eat 6, 7, 8 times a day to stoke your metabolism. Your metabolism, right? Utter bullshit.
Yeah.
And as that turned out, created habits and behaviors that lead straight to type 2 diabetes.
Right.
And there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot, scientifically and clinically that goes into that. And I'm not sure that people want to get so into the weeds on that, but this programming that we were sort of raised on for decades and decades and decades has, there's a ton of residual from that, and we're really just scratching the surface of uncovering the consequences of that. Our chronic disease rates are skyrocketing. I know I've touted this statistic before, at least with us talking. So a lot of what we're talking about falls under the umbrella of metabolic health. People think of metabolism, and you kind of think straight to like, how fast is your metabolism in terms of losing weight? But it's really talking about our entire, our body's ability to utilize energy, right? Yeah. And yes, weight loss, fat loss is a conversation under that umbrella. But I mean, it's really our body's ability to utilize fuel and operate and function well. So when you look at metabolic health, you're also looking at, you're looking at system-wide health. So we're talking about not only the obvious and the trajectory from insulin resistance to prediabetes to type 2 diabetes, but we're talking about cardiovascular disease, right? Yeah. We're talking about neurological disease. Alzheimer's is now being referred to by many practitioners as type 2 diabetes.
I just saw one of my friends. She's a death doula. We should have her on. She has seen a rising rate of young people with Alzheimer's, and
100%.
35 years old. A girl that's 35 years old. As you were talking about,
early onset,
type 3 of diabetes, but but yeah, it's 30s, 50s, and they're not able to be taken care of by their family because they're violent, and they need care at such an early age. And looking at them, you would think they're normal. Like, is normal good these days? I don't know. Like the normal average American, they look average. But does looking average mean that you're internally healthy. So you
absolutely
can
not. Absolutely not.
and be obese. Or
Right. Absolutely. You could be, what's considered like obese on the inside,
right,
basically.
right.
And there's a lot of different factors that play into that. So obesity, while often, very often, it goes hand in hand with uh, insulin resistance, diabetes, metabolic health problems, often. Obesity is just one symptom. And there are many factors that could make a person more or less obese on the outside, uh, indicating a metabolic problem inside. And I know that ethnicity is actually one of the big factors that can play into this. And so, and I'm just scratching the surface of this knowledge myself, but essentially, like a person of Northern European descent, a Caucasian person. So this has to do with how much their fat cells are able to expand before it starts to cause metabolic dysfunction on the inside. So
Okay.
in plain terms, a Caucasian person could get externally fatter than, for example, like a Chinese person or a person of Chinese ethnicity, before they start seeing the problems on the inside, such as insulin resistance, which is really at the underpinning of all of this stuff. And in that way, their fat cells being able to expand is actually a protective measure, and that's really what fat is, right? When we, fat is excess, so that could be excess energy or glucose. It could be excess toxins, right? That's another factor in all of this, is environmental toxins or toxins in our food, and excess hormones. So when we have a place to put it, then that it buys us a little more time, I guess, before we start seeing the metabolic destruction on the inside. Does that mean obesity is healthy? No, it doesn't. But that's just an example of why one person might, look look one way on the outside. But I mean, I've been seeing this even before I was in nutrition, just as a nurse, right? By far, not everybody with type 2 diabetes or any of these chronic diseases with metabolic underpinnings, some of them were very frail, and in particular, as you get older, kind of depending on what else is going on, that's a big thing that you'll see. So obesity is one symptom in this umbrella of issues, but it's not a guaranteed
it's not the only thing. I mean,
piece of it, right?
Having a poor diet. So I mean, I'm just trying to think about things that I've seen in our communities and what people are saying, and that the death doula conversation was pretty recent that I saw that, and I was like, wow, that's alarming. And I do remember in some mom groups, people saying they were shocked at their blood work because they're thin, they work out, but their doctor said that they were obese. And, just the amount of surgeries that are needed, the sleep quality problem issues, the breathing problems, so on and so forth. So a lot of this, and it might be just because people are feeling more comfortable talking to groups and asking for help and looking for specialists in this way. And like mom groups are a good sub group to look at for these types of conversations. And, I think what I see is that people are championing Whole Foods. They are, communities are doing that. I'm trying to think, like, why do they choose other options? It's kind of like the fast food thing is discredited now. It's not like I don't have enough time, so I'm just going to get Chick-fil-A anymore.
Oh, there's still a great portion of our population, who is still absolutely doing that, and who is still, and there's truth in this, but there's also ways around it, because the government subsidizes a lot of the corn, wheat, and soy that are the basis for a lot of these processed
the sodas and whatnot.
The sodas, and that, of course, contributes to what we alluded to before about how there's a lot working against the argument for Whole Foods, and because there's not a lot of people who stand to really make money with the argument for Whole Foods and that. So of course it is part of the conversation, but there's a big a lot of forces to kind of try to quiet that conversation, and I hate to just throw around the word addiction and addictive, but we got to look at it. This stuff is addictive. Mm-hmm. It is addictive, and so and I mean I've been there. I have literally been in the position of, I'll use pizza as an example because that's kind of my my biggest kryptonite in terms of indulgence foods. I mean, I've eaten a whole pizza to the face numerous times. It's just, full to the point of being sick, but still, just can't stop eating the pizza, basically. Or even something more, and so we also do this thing as people, where we're like, oh, well, I don't eat that bad. And we'll kind of so a sub sandwich, for example, you could look at that and go, okay, well, I got some protein on it. There's some vegetables on here, whatever. But when you break down what it is, it's ultra processed meat, it's ultra processed cheese.
I hate the sub bread,
canola oil or whatever. Yeah. It's and the bread. Okay, bread, y'all, bread. And we can get into the sodium conversation a little bit too. But bread is one of the worst culprits here, and even just the idea of a sandwich. So we're like, okay, this is not that bad, and I'm getting some protein or whatever, but what are you eating the sandwich with? Even if you're eating them with, kettle cooked chips or whatever it is, that's a huge carbohydrate load.
Yeah.
Huge carbohydrate load for very little protein. And then, you get into whatever additives and chemicals are in the bread, are in the meat, are in the cheese, and the oil conversation is a whole other episode, but things like that, or so this is a thing that we do too. We rationalize that because we're not eating like honey buns and Twinkies
right
for every meal, that we're not eating that bad. But when you really break it down and when you really look at it, we're still in the 60% ultra processed foods realm without even really realizing it. And going back to the original question of, do I still see resistance to this? Well, and I touched on the sodium bit too. And so that's another one of these things that kind of got demonized along the way, like with fat and cholesterol, dietary cholesterol, that really threw us for a loop. And so you'll talk to a cardiac patient is the biggest one for this, right? And you have heart failure or hypertension, high blood pressure. A lot of times, they'll tell you, okay, eat a low sodium diet. So, and I just had this conversation recently, and a client of mine was saying, okay, well, I found this low sodium this and low sodium that, this low sodium taco seasoning, and I said, let's back up.
Yeah.
I said, we don't even have to look at the sodium if we just say, okay, how about instead of looking for low sodium, highly processed foods, we just look for whole natural foods. A piece of, a ribeye doesn't have sodium in it. A potato doesn't have sodium in it. A head of broccoli or a head of lettuce doesn't have sodium in it. And most of the sodium is life-giving and absolutely necessary, right?
Yeah.
And the vast majority, when you look at high sodium as a problem, that's serving as a proxy for ultra processed foods, because these ultra processed foods, and not even just the ones that you think of that are actually really salty, but they've looked at this, and the majority of sodium in people's diets is not coming from the salt shaker. It's a very limited amount of sodium that people are getting is coming from bread. Actually, bread is the highest source of sodium in people's diets. So, and that's not to say that everybody needs to go low carb or keto or anything like that. Your vegetables, and particularly your starchy vegetables, like, hey, go for it. Fruits, those are all carbohydrate containing foods, but there's no additives. There's no additives. I'm all for I'm a big fan of, a real fermented sourdough piece of sourdough every once in a while, but
or Ezekiel bread, or
heavy on the bread and crackers even. All right. That's a big one that gets health washed or green washed a lot, is different crackers, even the gluten-free stuff. Right. Yeah. Like, we've just become so heavy on this that we're not realizing that we're still in this realm of ultra processed foods. And so, but the whole point of this really is to free people of this, tediousness of trying to analyze and hyperanalyze labels. We should look at labels, but we should minimize the amount of labels that we're using altogether. And that would solve a lot of our problems and free up a lot of our time.
Yeah,
and we would feel a lot better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Better, and we could get into, of course, once you do that, there's a lot more things you can look at with diet. You got to look at protein, all these sorts of things. But if you're in that state of overwhelm and you just got to make something work for you, again, if we're going to come back to the one thing, what's the one thing you could do with your diet that's going to have the biggest impact? That is to get rid of the ultra processed foods. They're not serving you, and they're not, you will find that your taste buds change, your cravings and hunger becomes different.
Yeah.
Becomes different because you're not consuming things that are scientifically engineered to have certain chemical reactions in your brain that are going to then drive your behavior,
right? Yeah,
for everything following that. And you're getting the nutrients that are coming in the food. You're getting the fiber that's coming in the food, so you're not getting these massive blood sugar spikes and then dips. And you're not getting these hardcore cravings anymore.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice because there is just so much information out there. And to your point, if people are feeling overloaded by that, yeah. What is the length of time do you suggest to people that are super lost on nutrition to push the label? Like,
I mean, just start today and, start today and just, there is no, there's no dietary requirement for anything that's in ultra processed foods. So,
I mean, once you stay away from it long enough, it just becomes
your desires will change. Yeah. You start to look at things, as not even food anymore.
Yeah.
Certain things, like I'll go by certain restaurants or whatever, and it's just like that doesn't even read as food to me anymore. Certain things.
Right. Sure.
And then, you can take this is not at all to take the enjoyment out of food. It's to change what you view as enjoyable food. And then, you will have, because you will over time, and not much time, but over time, you will also change the way your hunger and satiety hormones work. Because if you're eating the average of or above amount of ultra processed foods, they have for sure hijacked your natural hunger and satiety hormones. They are literally built and designed to do that. So once you get those back in your own control, then you'll find it much easier to perhaps include something pizza like or whatever your thing is every now and again, and find ways to make things with whole food ingredients.
I like the idea of when there's something I don't understand, whether it be with nutrition or fitness or relationships or work, just to approach it with curiosity and kind of like regain control over it. So some of the ideas that you just kind of touched upon that I was thinking of is like, since I've kind of been off bread for a long time, especially since I learned about my MTHFR over 10 years ago, I just don't eat enriched. I'll eat it. I won't say no if someone's serving me at their house. I'll be respectful, but it's just not a part of my life. I don't think about it. I don't want it. I'll make a sandwich. It's, a big no-no for me. It will manifest in my skin. It's inflammatory to me. Salts are important and so on and so forth to me, especially with, I teeter on the side of having POTS or dysautonomia. So I do need to have the salts and the minerals and so on and so forth. But looking at things with curiosity, and I like to think of things, I'm not a scientist, obviously, but I think of it as like doctoring around or a scientist. And so like, I think I told you on date night, Kevin and I, we took like a recipe. We've been on this, like, we'll focus on one thing. We've been playing with jackfruit lately and recreating it into recipes that are using healthy ingredients that, hit all the buckets, but like being creative with it. So like, for example, we made, now this did have bread in it, and we spent a good deal of time looking for bread because we were looking for something that was as close to Whole Foods as we could find, and there wasn't anything. We went to Publix and we were like, there's 2 aisles of bread, and there's, in this type of bread, we were looking for pumpernickel and we couldn't find it. So I did have a little bit of bread on date night, but we were creative in thinking about like, okay, instead of using like a really salty flavoring, which we do add salt to our food, but we use organic bone broth as like seasoning for the jackfruit to have it, the collagen, the gravy, to have that like meat consistency. and the other side, like accoutrement. So it's kind of like a game for us to look at recipes and think, how can we redo these in a way that's healthier, so we can just it's fun, like just an activity based.
That's super fun. I mean, I make pizza variations all the time.
I've heard you say that. Yeah.
Like that is my mission in life, to make healthy pizza variations. And tacos and all the things that hit that sort of comfort
So with your
button,
client,
but without causing the damage that is ultimately very uncomfortable, right? And I don't think people should have to try to be scientists to understand good nutrition. I mean, and if you just think about it from a biological and from an evolutionary perspective, and say we're talking about a lion, we can pretty easily understand that if we started feeding a lion Fruit Loops
and corn dogs,
or even something more innocuous, Special K, I don't know, right, whatever, the lion would not do very well.
Yeah, right.
And the same thing goes for humans. What were we biologically, evolutionarily eating for forever, right? Stuff that we could find out in the wild. If we could capture a wild animal, we better believe we were gonna eat it, probably nose to tail. And what else did we have access to? We didn't have access to ultra refined products, and we certainly didn't. This is the thing that Sean Stevenson says all the time, and kind of talk, because processing is a spectrum. I do have to add that there too. And technically, like, let's say olive oil is a processed food. Cooking food is a process. So processing isn't inherently bad. Sometimes we have to process something to make it safe to consume. Right. But when you are looking at a piece of corn, and then you look at Fruit Loops or Corn Pops or whatever, and you cannot you cannot even fathom how we got from, corn to Corn Pops. Like, or if you had a person from, 1,000 years ago looking at this thing, and they, whatever the thing is, and they could not figure out like how the hell we got from point A to point B. Like, we're not in a good place. So what could, and that was something that, although I don't believe that we necessarily need to be sticking to dogmatic, rigid diet frameworks, because it's so much more individual variance to consider. I think that was one really valuable thing that I got in my paleo phase, was like understanding how people could have been eating, at that point in time. And it's probably in my best interest to not go too far outside of that level of ingredients and processing to function as I'm intended to. Because our technology has evolved so far past, and by technology I mean, food technology as well, and all the other things, but it has evolved so far past our biology that we are just really out of alignment in general. So So, it is becoming more and more a part of the mainstream conversation, but we've got a long way to go. And I know, as part of my life's work to put my voice into this conversation, just so that, anybody who might not have heard it from another source, but, might hear it from me, well, great.
Yeah. I think it's important. I mean, I think your approach is really good and fun and, playful at the same time. So it's easy for people to adapt to the way that you are looking at things. It helps when it doesn't feel so regimented or here. There's a lot of resistance to perfectionism. And it's not a good idea until it becomes your own idea, right? So, people can be hearing experts talk to them all the time and they're not receiving it. It's not landing with them.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's like,
right. So however it lands, cool. Whoever it lands from, cool. I definitely didn't make up the idea of eating whole natural foods, but I've been on both sides of it. I firmly understand now which side is better for humans, and above all, I think simplifying health is the name of the game.
yeah.
People, most people don't want to spend 75% of their time listening to health and wellness and fitness podcasts and diving into that information. So if I can take all that information and simplify it for people who want to spend that mental energy on other things, then awesome.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
That's the same. Takes me back to one of our earlier conversations of find your idiot and find your genius. Like, what's the thing that you do that's just like so easy to you, and it's probably not to somebody else. So I think it's good. I like that. So that's the one thing. I think it would be good to drop some conversation points inside of the Conscious Collaboration Collective, the closed and private Facebook group. I just welcomed a couple new people inside there. So everyone coming inside the group, they're downloading our guide that we're talking about aligning the different components of our minds and our bodies, our environments, and oftentimes what our life journey is or our businesses. So, so hi to all the newbies, and if you're not in yet, come inside there. And we do have Velva. Like I said, Emily, Velva's coming next week because she had a personal appointment today that she needs to focus on, and then we'll have her next week to bring her Jungian perspective. So I don't know, I'm excited about that. Maybe I'll put some topics of conversation inside the group too to hear what people want to learn in terms of the psychology, perhaps dream work or shadow selves and that type of thing. So I'm really looking forward to that. But so the one thing, I like that as
the one thing. And so, if I would, the one thing regarding diet, right? And again, like we discussed in the beginning, there's other pillars. But if you focus on the biggest rocks, the interventions of biggest impact first, it makes dialing in the details down the road so much easier.
Yes.
Because you'll feel better. You'll feel better. You'll have more mental clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to throw in just one more little caveat to the discussion because I don't think we did this. And this is you can see this a lot in health conscious people, but this can start to get really insidious. And that is regarding fruit. And eat it in the whole fruit forms, not don't drink it.
Yeah.
Don't drink it. Because that then, even if it's a fresh fruit juice or what have you, and that's not to say you can never ever have fresh fruit juice, but
right.
Don't make it a habit of getting your fruit from that, because that removes the fiber and then basically turns it into how it behaves in your body is really just similar to a soda or any other sugar sweetened beverage. So just to add that little caveat, when we say whole, we mean whole.
That means with the skin on,
the whole fruit. Yeah. You can cook it or whatever, but don't drink your fruit.
Yeah. Okay. Good addition.
That removes the protective fiber.
Good addition. I like it. Well, thank you so much. I think that was a good topic, very valuable, very on point. And so I always learn something in these conversations and I'm really grateful for it. If you guys want to continue the conversation with us, find us in the links provided in the description. And thank you for subscribing and sharing with your friends. We love to hear from you. And Emily, I want to let you know, for whatever reason, like our sneaky snakes episode is like,
Snake.
so if you guys haven't listened to that, it's for whatever reason having a second rising. It just started. People are downloading it. I don't even remember really the whole gist of what we talked about, but that may be something that's relevant to you listening there. And so what do you say? We wrap it up?
Sure.
All right. Well, I am about ready to head. It's Tuesday, April 15th, so I'm headed to the post office. Woohoo!
Yes.
Yes.
Tax day. Happy tax day.
Yes.
And a lot of CPAs are going to let out a big exhale after today.
Yeah, be included. All right, Emily. Well, thank you so much. I'll talk to you. I'll send you some reels later on this evening. And bye, everybody. We'll talk to you in 5.
Talk to y'all in 5. Bye, guys.
Thank y'all so much for listening to our podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends so they can join our circle of collaboration on this journey. You can find us on Instagram at Conscious Collaboration Podcast, on Spotify, iTunes, and Audible, to name a few. Please join us next time for another deep dive into how you can live life in more alignment, mind, body, and business. Send us your questions and comments in our DMs or email us at consciouscollaborationpodcast@gmail.com. See you in 5 minutes.